what we see as a byproduct of caring about our customer. Like, our customer's our boss, right? Like, if we don't treat her the right way, if we don't make decisions based on that person the right way, then we lose. And with that mentality, it's how we approach everything. So retail thinks about it that way. And as a result of that, we have about as high a conversion rate as you can have in the consumer retail world. I mean, our conversion rates in our best stores are north of 40%. And that's unheard of. And it's because we don't focus on it. Like, the irony is we focus on making connection with somebody, and it works.
Welcome to How Leaders Lead. I'm David Novak, and every week I have conversations with the best leaders in the world to help you become the best leader that you can be. Today I'm sitting down with Tom Nolan, the CEO of Kendra Scott, a popular jewelry brand that's been crushing it lately. 44 months of nearly double-digit growth. And guess what? Tom's been the CEO for 45 of those months. So yeah, this guy knows how to get results. But here's the thing. Tom's not the kind of leader who bulldozes his way to the top. For him, it's all about making real connections with his team and his customers. And when you focus on that, the results tend to take care of themselves. This episode might just be the mindset shift that you need to start building those connections and getting real results. So here's my conversation with my good friend and soon to be yours, Tom Nolan. When we first met, we talked about our mutual belief in the power of recognition. When did you get sold on recognition, as a real business driver? Tell us the story.
Well, I mean, look, I would say just as a young person growing up in business, I always felt like I had a voice and wasn't always heard, right? So when it was heard, it made me feel really good. And I think it started probably before that, just playing sports as a kid. Everybody wants to get an attaboy, and they made me feel really good. And then I read a great book called Oh, Great One. Somebody wrote, and that one really solidified it for me. And I started making it. I've always, I think, made it a fundamental part of kind of how I've parented my kids, how I've led in business. And that book, and I'm not pandering you, but really that book kind of changed how I thought about it internally at our company, Kendra Scott. And we incorporated recognition in a way where, on a weekly basis now, I ask for getting who's doing a great job that we could just give a high five. And because it's so important, people work really, really hard, as you know, David. And a lot of the times, and most of the times, I think for the right kind of people, what motivates them isn't money. It's knowing that they're doing a great job and the feedback of that. So I knew how important it was to me. I've seen how important it is as a dad to my kids. And it's really proven and paid high dividends in our organization.
You have one of the most original CEO personal recognition awards that I've ever seen. Tell us about it.
Yeah. And literally it was after I read your book. And the jar, I mean, I read a book called The Way of the Shepherd a long time ago, and it really changed how I led. I mean, I consider myself a servant leader. And, when you first become a leader of people, it's scary. So somebody gave me this book in my first real management role, and it really just talks about how to be a servant leader and kind of the thesis for the book. And I would suggest everybody read it. It doesn't take very long to read. It's a short little book. There's not as many pictures.
I love those short books. Yeah, I read it after you told me about it. So this is great, but go ahead.
There's not as many pictures in it as most of the books I like to read, but this one worked out great. So but the thesis of it really is, it's a guy going to business school, ironically, in my hometown here of Austin, Texas, at UT, and he's studying how to be a leader in business school, in McCombs Business School. And he has this great professor, and the professor has agreed to give him kind of on the side coaching and leadership advice. And he's so excited about it. He gets all ready and he puts on his best penny loafers. The professor says he's going to come pick him up on the weekend. And he shows up, and the professor's wearing basically cowboy clothes. And he doesn't take him to get a business symposium. In fact, he takes him out to his ranch and he helps him herd sheep, because the guy was a shepherd. So it goes through all of this to really understand, like, to be a great shepherd, you got to understand the shape of your flock, each one of your sheep individually. And it's all about servant leadership. And the shepherd's crook, which we all know, is a symbol of that. And sometimes the shepherd's crook is used to rap a sheep on the head when it's doing something stupid. Sometimes it's used to save a sheep if it's fallen in a hole. Other times it's used to protect it from a coyote or something. So I've told a lot of people about this book. I've given out a lot of copies of it over the years. So as a wonderful recognition for me, I've gotten beautiful shepherd's crooks over the years from different people. My very favorite one. So we had a problem at Kendra Scott. Not a problem. It was an opportunity, I guess, where I felt like we had this great business performance, but I don't think we were recognizing people as much as we could have. And listening to what you talked about, you had to give something that meant something to you, and not expect anything back. So we created a recognition vehicle. I took the absolute favorite shepherd's crook I've ever gotten. It's about a 250-year-old shepherd's crook from Ireland. And I brought it into our office, and I basically said, look, this is going to be a recognition vehicle that we use in our organization. And there's a couple of things that need to happen. The first thing is I'm going to identify it to give it to somebody, and it's going to be somebody that exemplifies servant leadership and how we like to operate here as an organization. And your job, once you have it, is to identify who's going to get it next and then leave your mark on it yourself. So the first time I gave this out to somebody, it was an individual in our IT department. And he was a quiet guy, but he really exemplified everything that, he was not looking for anything specifically. He was always working for everybody else. He was a great team member, part of the family. And so I give it to him. And what happened next, the time he got up there to give it to somebody, it was amazing. I mean, I didn't think this guy would be a great public speaker, if I'm being honest. So he gets up, and this is my favorite item that I own. Okay. Like, that's an important part of the story. My very favorite 250-year-old priceless artifact to me. And I'm kind of nervous about what somebody's going to do to leave their mark on it. So he gets up there. His name is Sean. He gets up there, and I notice he's drilled a hole into the shepherd's crook and wrapped something around it. And he gets up there and he starts talking about what it was. I'm like, oh man, this is my favorite thing. He's just destroyed it. And Sean is a road cyclist, and he's really passionate about it. That's what he's into, the way that, we're into golf. And he took a spoke out of one of the wheels, and he said the wheel that he had taken the spoke out of rode 50,000 miles. But the identifier was the spoke on its own was useless. It can't do anything on its own. But as a part of a wheel, it was capable of riding 50,000 miles. And I'll tell you, I didn't think this guy could public speak. He was crying. I was crying. The entire department was crying. I mean, and now it's turned into, several years later, David, the thing I look forward to, we do what we call a family meeting, which is basically a company meeting every month at Kendra Scott. And every month for the last several years, we've identified somebody reads the book, and they're recognized for it very publicly in the organization. And I'll send you a picture of it, an updated picture of it now. It looks ridiculous. There's unicorns hanging off of it and a lot of weird stuff, but it's become a great sense of pride and recognition in our organization. It really matters to people. And I feel like, you paid it forward to me, and I'm paying it forward, I feel like, to many others in the company. And it's been awesome.
That's great. My late wife Wendy used to joke. She used to say, "Hey, David, the reason why you love recognition so much is that you love getting it." And
there's truth to that. Yeah.
And then there's a lot of truth that.
Yeah.
What would be the most powerful recognition you think you've ever received?
I would say, as a father, when my kids, anybody recognizing me being a good dad is probably what I've recognized the most. My kids saying thank you for things and how much they appreciate it. That's been the best recognition from a professional perspective. I think it's, whenever somebody says we've done a good job. I mean, recently we just looked at the numbers of our business, and for 44 out of the last 40, let's say for 44 months in a row, we've had meaningful growth, mostly double-digit growth in our business. And I've been the CEO for 45 of those months. And I think when I heard that and somebody kind of recognized me for that, it was really powerful. You know how it is running a business. You're so caught up in it, and you're living and dying by every day. It's hard to pick your head up sometimes and really think about wow, we're accomplishing a lot. And that was a moment for me where I felt like, boy, we put a great team together. We've accomplished a lot together as a team. And, 44 months in a row in this economic and geopolitical environment that we're living in right now, I was really proud of.
Yeah, well, the first principle in recognition is that it needs to be well earned, and that kind of performance is
Yeah.
that deserves some recognition, which is fantastic. So you love recognition, I know that, and you're really good at it, and the organization does a lot of it. And I want to get now a little bit more into how you lead, but first I want to take you back a little bit and tell me a story about your upbringing and the how that impacted the way you lead today.
Yeah. I was just telling the story yesterday to a group of kids at UT through the Kendra Scott Entrepreneurial Institute. I think how you're brought up it shapes who you are as an individual. And I had a tough upbringing. I'm the only person in my family to graduate high school. I had, some real challenges growing up and kind of where I grew up and how I grew up. And I learned at an early age from my parents. My dad was an electrician. He worked for the Long Island Railroad, and my mom turns out she was the entrepreneur in the family. She had a hot dog truck when I was a kid. She had a Good Humor ice cream route. At one point, she was selling GEDs. Now, David, I don't even think that's legal to sell GEDs, but like she was doing it and I was helping her sell it. So I think growing up, I saw hard work come to life, and my parents worked really hard to provide for our family. And, so I witnessed that, and sports was an outlet for me. I wasn't a great student, if I'm being honest, but I was a decent athlete. And if I couldn't throw a baseball, when I was in high school, I probably wouldn't have gone to college, and I'd be an electrician like my dad. And everything I've ever done has really been with kind of hard work and dedication, and perseverance and just being relentless. And it's paid a high dividend for me. I would say, had some, I know you had loss recently, and I lost my sister, my only sibling, had a brain aneurysm, and she passed away in 2009, kind of suddenly. And, I think when you grow up and things are challenging and you've been through some really hard stuff, I think it makes you stronger for those who survive it. And in a working environment, things don't affect you as much. Like if you live through really hard things and you've persevered and you've come out on the other side of it stronger, things don't scare you in business. A tough, macroeconomic climate, or a bad month, or bad earnings call, whatever. It's not gonna affect you the same way it does. I think folks that kind of had it a little bit easier growing up, and so I wouldn't change how it was. It was not easy, and it put a chip on my shoulder for me in my life. I wanted to prove people wrong that didn't think I could accomplish things. And hopefully, hopefully I'm doing that, for people in my family.
Fantastic. And I got to ask you, how'd you, you're this big athlete, you're a great golfer, obviously a good baseball player, how'd you find your way to Kendra Scott, a jewelry company?
It wasn't for my passion for women's jewelry, David. That's for sure. It's a funny story. I started my career in the publishing industry, and I worked at Zip Davis, and then ultimately Condé Nast. I was a publisher of Golf World magazine. Then I went up going to Ralph Lauren, where I ran their golf and tennis business, which was great. And I kind of had an itch I wanted to scratch to be an entrepreneur. And I started a holding company called Prospect Brands, and we owned a couple of different apparel companies. And while I was there, I got a phone call from a private equity firm called Norwest Venture Partners that had just made an investment in a jewelry company in Austin, Texas called Kendra Scott that I had never heard of before. And I don't know how they found my name. I don't know why they called me. I'd never served on a board before. I had never worked in a jewelry business before. But man, am I glad that they did. And they called me, and I went on their board, and the company at the time, I think, was doing about 25 million in sales and had an enterprise value around 100 million. And then 3 years later, so I joined the board, and I was just really curious. I asked a lot of questions, and I feel like one thing in my career, I've always done things I didn't know anything about. And I don't know how that happened or why, but it served me well because, I was never a know-it-all. I just kind of asked a lot of questions because I had to. I didn't know things. But 3 years after we did that deal, Kendra did a deal with Berkshire Partners that put an enterprise value on the business at north of $1 billion. And at that point, she asked me to join the organization. So it was an interesting story in that I was living in Greensboro, North Carolina, running this holding company, and I really loved it there. I went to Chapel Hill to get my business degree, and I was not. She was like, after we did the deal, she's like, "I'd love for you to come work at the company." And David, being from the East Coast, moving to Texas, somebody might well have asked me to move to outer space. Like I had not spent a lot of time there. I was not interested. And I was like, hard no. I do not want to go to Texas. I love what you're doing. I'd love to stay on the board if you'd have me. And Kendra, you've had her here, and I know her as well. I mean, she is, talk about being tenacious and relentless, man. She is something. And I knew she wouldn't stop asking me. So she said, we're doing a Kendra Cares event in New York City. I was up there for a board meeting for another company I serve on the board of. And I was like, fine, I'll go to this thing. It'll make her stop asking me, like, fine. And I'm a very emotional person. I'm a sappy person. I cry in the movies. I cry at sad commercials. And this Kendra Cares event, which is where we take our color bar, which is a mobile create your own jewelry kit. We bring it to hospitals and schools and businesses. This specific one was at Sloan Kettering's pediatric oncology ward. Wow. And I mentioned that I'm an emotional guy. I have 4 kids. I had no interest in going to a pediatric oncology ward, not because I didn't want to help people, but because I didn't want to embarrass anybody and I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I very begrudgingly go into this Kendra Cares event, and I get into the elevator and I go up to the floor where the pediatric oncology ward was. And, and I'm dreading it. I'm very nervous and anxious about it. And before the doors open, I could hear like bass on the other side of the doors, like you're going into a nightclub or something. And I didn't know what it was, but the doors open and we had a DJ set up there. We had clowns and balloons, and we turned a pediatric oncology ward, which is a very unhappy place usually, into the happiest place in New York City. And I made jewelry for sick kids and their parents and their grandparents and siblings for the next 3 hours. And time flew by like this, and it warmed my heart, and I held it together. I did not cry. I did not embarrass anybody. I get in the elevator. I go downstairs, went across the street, completely lost it. Called home and I said, we were moving to Texas. Like, I'm never going to get to work at a company where I can help people like this. And we did. And that was 8 years ago. And it's been a heck of a ride. And we've helped a lot of people along the way. The company's given back almost $70 million to help women's and children charities. And my family and I volunteer a lot to help those in need. And it's really, outside of the business success and recognize our employees, it's been the greatest gift next to being, having my family that I've had in my life.
We'll be back with the rest of my conversation with Tom Nolan in just a moment. But first, let's hop into the How Leaders Lead time machine and go all the way back to my first ever episode with none other than Kendra Scott herself. She actually talks about how they launched their first stores and what they did to focus on connecting with customers.
From day one, I believed that the most important thing we could do is create a connection with our customer, that the transaction will follow. And the goal of the store was, let's connect. Let's learn from our customer. Let's find out what she loves, what she hates, what she wants more of. And then let's utilize that to build the best collections we can. What happened was that experience was so magical that we would have lines down the block to get in. It was like they were releasing a new iPhone or something. I mean, it was unbelievable. People could not wait to get into our stores. And that's when we knew, okay, maybe this isn't just a one store situation. Maybe we could bring this to other places.
Go back and listen to my entire conversation with Kendra, episode 1, here on How Leaders Lead. So you knew you could really make a difference in the world when you took that job, but you really didn't have a passion for jewelry at the time, I'm sure. So in your view, do the leaders need to have a passion for their product to be successful?
Certainly it makes it easier sometimes when you do, because previous to this job, I was super passionate about working at Ralph Lauren. I loved working in the publishing industry for my favorite magazine. But I think the answer is no. I mean, I'm proof of that. I am not passionate about women's jewelry. I'm passionate about our customer. I'm passionate about our employees. And I think it's made me a better leader because I'm not passionate. When you're passionate about something, you feel like you're an expert and you act like an expert. I don't ever feel like an expert in our business. And I always, similar to you, I have a servant mentality. I always feel like I'm serving our employees. I don't feel like anybody works for me. And I think that is additive to that when you're not passionate about something, because you have to be curious. You have to ask a lot of questions. You got to seek guidance and counsel from others. And I've had great people like you in my life that have helped me along the way and given me advice and pulled me along. And, that's made a huge difference for me. And I'd say in addition to that, the biggest difference for me coming here outside of just being in the jewelry business was when I started, our company was 99% female. My email address is Tom at Kendra Scott, not because I'm special, just because I was the only guy named Tom, which is like the most boring guy's name in the world, at Kendra Scott when I joined. Today we're 95% female, but that was, that turned the world on its head for me. I was not used to that environment. It was very different. And I would have never guessed I'd wind up in an organization with that group of constituents. And I would have never guessed I'd wind up in an industry that I had no knowledge of, but I'm there and I love it and I wouldn't change anything. And I love the group of people that we work with, and it's worked out very nicely.
So 95% of Kendra Scott is female.
Yeah.
And you're running it as the CEO.
Yeah.
What has that taught you, Tom, about being a minority?
Yeah, honestly, David, it's opened my eyes in a lot of ways in that specific regard. I mean, number one, it's taught me, I have to be empathetic, and I think having high EQ always wins on IQ. I've always read about that, and I always believed it, but I never saw it come to life the way I've seen it come to life here. So that's proven itself to be really true here. But yeah, I think it's also opened my eyes to like, I'm not like anybody, not like most people in the organization. And it's made me more empathetic to being a minority in different parts of life and work and the world. Obviously I don't know what it's like to be anybody but me, but I understand, I think, a little bit greater than I did, 10 years ago.
What advice could you give a male leader on this front? I mean, how do you work with the, female leaders and female employees, frontline employees? I mean, what's the key?
Well, I think I used this example yesterday because somebody asked me a similar question. What I had been used to in the past, working in mostly male-dominated businesses, was you and I are working together. We're teammates, or I work for you, or we're peers. And I do something you don't like, you do something I don't like. You just tell me, and I deal with it, right? And and you're direct, and that's okay because that's what I'm used to. And we go on and march about our days, and we don't think about it. That was what I was used to. It was how I led in the past. That it is not how it works here. And I don't think that's best practice, if I'm being honest. How you make people feel was never a quotient that I had to think about really in the past. It was all about results, right? It was like, put points on the board. If I hurt your feelings, too bad, right? Because I'm putting points on the board, and that's what matters. And that's what people care about. At the end of the day, when you're in a for-profit business, that is what matters, right? Just to be clear, full stop. However, how you make people feel along the way is much more important if you want long-lasting results. It's also much more important, I think, if you want to be a good person and do the right thing and lead the right way. And I could get away with it before because I was a performer, right? And this highlighted the fact that I couldn't get away with just doing that. I really had to think about things a little bit more holistically. So it taught me, like, when I read The Way of the Shepherd once a month now. I have for the last, going on just about 20 years. When I read that book now, I have a different perspective on it, like the shape of people, how you make people feel, understanding who they are as a parent, as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, as a son, as a father. Like that matters a lot more than I ever realized. It matters a lot in our organization. We treat people the right way. We have a lot of flexibility for working parents, and our culture is awesome as a result of it. I thought I had some great cultures in the past, but we have an incredible culture of people that, need to win. Like, nobody needs to win more than I do. Like, I am a tenacious competitor. I want to win at everything. I want to win driving to work. I want to win walking in New York City. I want to win at everything. And sometimes in a working environment, that's not always the best. It doesn't always make people feel the best. We do that here really successfully, but we do with kindness and compassion. And I think that has paid some really high dividends along the way.
As you mentioned, Tom, I did do a podcast basically when I was very early on in my podcast career, okay, with Kendra Scott. And you're right, she is a dynamic leader, and she's a founder. I mean, she is passionate. I mean, she's built this business from scratch, and, she has strong opinions. You've obviously had a great relationship with her. What advice can you give to others on how to successfully work with a founder?
So I've only worked for founders, and I've been a founder. Starting at Ziff Davis with Bill Ziff, going to Condé Nast with Cy Newhouse, then at Ralph. Then I was a founder at my business. All the companies I'm on the board of, everything I invest in, it's all founders. The thing that's I've seen across the board, no matter how big or small the company is, big public company to a small startup, founders look at the business as if it was their child. And as a parent, right, we know that you are Papa Bear or Mama Bear as it relates to anything hurting your child, right? And the idea, and this is why one of the reasons when I first came to Kendra Scott, when I became president, I thought that was it. I never thought that Kendra would give me the title of CEO, which I'm very thankful that she did, because it's like giving custody of your child to somebody. And I think you have to be empathetic and understand that founders care about everything more than anybody else, because it's their kid. And when you compound that with a founder whose name's on the building, and I've worked for three of them, between Ziff Davis, Bill Ziff, Ralph Lauren, and Kendra Scott, they care even more, right? Because everything that happens is a reflection on them, and it affects their reputation and ultimately affects their family. So being empathetic to that and understanding that and listening, I think is a key, really key driver. There's a book called The Founder's Mentality, which I think explains this really well. And for those who haven't worked with founders, it articulates kind of some of these little nuances on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's hard, and I think when you have a combination of a founder dynamic in addition to a financial sponsor, which we have, and a private equity partner, it's even more challenging, right? Because the financial sponsor expects operational excellence, and a founder expects that his child is taken care of the right way, and the brand's growing, and her vision is being executed. So, I think managing those two dynamics sometimes is challenging, but really rewarding when you do it, because there's nothing better than cultivating and coaching and teaching. And, I relish it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's hard, but it's more, hard things are more fun than easy things.
You're obviously a passionate believer in learning and building know-how. You've already mentioned 3 books, and we're just getting into this podcast. What's your process to turn the knowledge that you pick up either from books or talking to other leaders or visiting other companies? How do you turn that learning into action so that it really drives an impact in the business?
Yeah, I'm a voracious, you mentioned I'm a voracious reader. And seeker of knowledge. I didn't have a dad that could teach me business, right? So I sought it out really early on. And there's a lot of folks you've had on this podcast, or people you're one of them that I've reached out to over the years to ask for help and advice and counsel. And I think too many times people are afraid to ask for help. And you can't be. So I think that number one is really important. I think how you digest it, you got to be authentic about it, right? It doesn't matter what book you read or person you talk to. Like, I'm never going to be David Novak. No matter, I could do everything you do, I'm not going to be you. And I think there has to be an authenticity of taking bits and pieces of gleanings along the way from different people that you admire and look up to, and trying to put them into play in your life in any capacity. And it starts really small. So whether I read a book or get advice from somebody in my life, I try to internalize it and think about, okay, where does this apply to my life in a way where it feels like I'm not being a phony to do it that way, right? I don't want to be like, oh, he sounds just like so-and-so. I can only sound like me because I'm me. So I think it's about being honest and aware of yourself, number one, and then picking the places and knowing where your weaknesses are, and then trying to exercise that muscle. I knew my weakness was finance. I just didn't understand a balance sheet the right way the first time I was a CEO. So when I was 34, I went back and got my MBA because I thought that would make me better at finance. And it did. It made me sharper. And I also feel like once you have an MBA, you're allowed to say things like basis points. I felt like, all these MBAs say basis points. So I could say basis points.
You're starting to scare me here a little bit.
but I think I think it's just like knowing yourself and seeking out information and utilizing it in a way that makes sense for you, not for whoever wrote the book or whoever told it to you.
I've heard you say that you work for your team, they don't work for you. Mm-hmm. Talk more about that.
So when I was younger, I have very distinct memories about how we had nothing when I was a kid. And I have very distinct memories going, like the Ground Round was the nicest. If anybody remembers the Ground Round, like that was the nicest restaurant I was going to go to. So I remember going to places, and the way that like people treated my parents had a profound impact on me. Like people looked down at them and spoke differently to them than they did to people that had means. And so like that always stuck with me. And I also distinctly remember when I was younger in my career, I always, like I said, had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder just because of how I grew up. And I always had a voice. I always had something to say, and I always had an idea or things I wanted to talk about or questions I wanted to ask. And I felt like at lower levels, people were very dismissive of me. And I just didn't like the way that felt, right? I always said that, look, if I get into a position of authority in any capacity in my life, I want to treat people the right way. And this idea of servant mentality, I grew up in a household, a lot of my relatives are cops and they've been in the military. My grandmother's brother was Bull Halsey. So like a big military where it's the infantry eats before the generals. And that's just how I grew up. So it's stuck with me. And I've had great teachers and coaches in my life. Seth Wah has been like a big brother to me, and like one of the most impactful people in my life. And 15, 20 years ago, we were talking about this and I was asking him, like, what does it take to be a great leader? And he's like, and his dad was a teacher. He's like, great leaders and great CEOs are just teachers and coaches. And like, it stuck with me and I say it all the time and he's right. Like, and I'm just a part of a team here. I'm not the most important part of the team. I'm to my mind, I'm no more important than anybody else. And I think people know that I feel that way and it's authentic. I don't just say it because I feel like I have to, or I read a book. I genuinely feel that way. Like I want to serve. I like serving others. I like teaching and coaching. I like making people better. I like making myself better. I think about like my wife and kids and, I live for them. And they're my team here at home. And the 3,000 people that work at Kendra Scott, like they're my family and my team at work. And I'm just a part of the team. And I hope I'm serving them well. And if I am, I feel like it'll help lead to great results. But we've got a great team and I'm lucky to be a part of it.
There are a lot of leaders who believe that they need to create some emotional distance from their team members in order to make the tough call, when those tough calls, they have to be made. And obviously they do have to be made.
Yeah.
What's your take on emotional distance with your team members? How do you look at it?
I don't think you can lead people the right way without having an emotional connection to them. Like I love the people I work with. They are a part of my family. And it's like being a parent, Dave. I think the best, outside of being a teacher and a coach, the closest analogy I can think of for leading people is like being a parent. Like I love my children more than anything on earth and I discipline them. I remember when my parents used to tell me this when I was a kid, when I was getting smacked for doing something stupid, like we're disciplining you because I love you. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But as a dad, it does. Like I discipline my kids because I care about them and I want to make them better. And if I don't discipline, they're going to grow up to be bad adults. And I think leading is very similar in that, like, if you really genuinely care about somebody and you know who they are and what they're made of, there's horses for courses. And sometimes you got to make hard decisions. And ultimately, David, you've probably seen this in your career too. Anytime you had to make a tough decision, it ultimately winds up being the best thing for everybody. Right. And if you know that person, you're emotionally connected to them and you know what drives them and you know where they're going to land on their feet the right way. Most people that I've had to displace over the years, I've helped find other jobs, and, just because they're not right for our company, it doesn't mean they're not right for another company. And sometimes that's not the case because somebody's, doing something they shouldn't be doing. But in most cases, I feel like you have to be emotionally connected to people to understand if you're making the right decision or not.
You've obviously taken that into your business as well, that mindset, because, in retail, a lot of companies are always talking about transactions. And
yeah.
You guys, you focus on connection.
That's right.
Yeah. Say more about that.
Yeah. So, we've got 140 retail stores across the country now. Like I alluded to earlier, the business has been really successful. Our retail team is led by an extraordinary individual who's done a great job with the team, and I'm so proud of her. But everything that we've ever done has always been experiential. It's always been about connection. Like, you have all these metrics in retail of, there's foot traffic, and then there's conversion, and there's SPT and UPT and all these acronyms of like how you're going to determine what the KPIs are. They're going to make a business successful. And, nobody needs jewelry, right? Like, it's not sustaining life. They don't need it to. So it has to be an experience. So we train our people on wow service. We train our people on experience. Colleen, who leads our retail team, has done an amazing job of all about making connection, right? And what we see as a byproduct of caring about our customer, like our customer's our boss, right? She signs our paychecks, full stop. Like, if we don't treat her the right way, if we don't make decisions based on that person the right way, then we lose. And with that mentality, it's how we approach everything. So retail thinks about it that way. And as a result of that, we have about as high a conversion rate as you can have in the consumer retail world. I mean, our conversion rates in our best stores are north of 40%. And that's unheard of. And it's because we don't focus on it. Like, the irony is we focus on making connection with somebody, and it works. And in addition to that, the team's done a great job of building events. We'll do, in 140 stores, we'll do close to 30,000 events this year. And the large majority of those events, David, are philanthropic in nature. Like, we're helping people in a local community. So when you combine the fact that we're a fabric of a local community, we know who our customer is, we treat them the right way, it leads to a great connection. And just because somebody's not walking out with the yellow bag the first time, I'm betting when they come back, they will, because we treated them the right way. And that old adage of like, you never remember what people said, you remember how they made you feel. It's true in life, So I think that really matters.
It's true, but very few businesses really act that way. And that's maybe why you've had such great success the past couple of years. Innovation is really a key part of any business, and particularly in retail, where you've got to continually surprise your customers. How are you driving innovation with your team to come up with the next big disruptor in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some table stake innovation things that we're utilizing the same way everybody else does. AI is prevalent as it relates to the consumer space right now, and customer service, and how to get sharper and better. But I think there's innovation at point of sale, right? Getting people, making their experience better at the store. There's innovation on our website with, dimension is important in jewelry, right? So if you're going to buy a pair of earrings, you want to see what they look like and how they look on an outfit. So we've done a lot of virtual try-on type stuff. So there's some like basic table stake innovation that relates to that. But the thing that I'm trying to constantly innovate on is how can we be better to our customer? How can I innovate to be a better leader to our people? How can we be more effective with communicating with one another? How can we eliminate PowerPoint presentations and meetings with a bunch of people in there and like really be thoughtful? So I'd say it's less about utilizing technology and more about just leveraging relationships and trying to do the right thing and continue to be outliers in a space that has not performed very well. And I think it's because when everybody else is focusing on some of these hot button things, like we're just focusing on like tried and true kind of basics. It's like, practicing the 6-foot putts instead of, working on your driver. You hit a lot more 6-foot putts than you hit drivers in a round.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. And when you think about your industry, you're outperforming everybody in it because of the approach that you're taking. Is there anybody out there you think that could disrupt your business?
I think the greatest competitor we have is ourselves, and potential complacency because of success. I mean, you talk to, I'm even though I'm not a great athlete anymore, I like to pretend that I am, but I admire what great athletes do. And I think there's a lot of analogies to, sports dynasties, whether, Tom Brady's been on here talking about, how he led the team but we hold ourselves really highly accountable to continue to put points on the board. So I don't worry about what anybody else is doing. I just worry about, us not getting complacent after having a lot of victories and continuing to show up, after we win we would look at the fourth quarter as our Super Bowl, coming into the holidays. And, we always have these sports analogies in the business. And, we talked about last year about finishing up championship mindset was our theme for the year this year. And we talked about like great teams, like what makes championship mindset. It's kind of everything you do, you have to think about as a champion. It's like, the only difference is after Tommy won the Super Bowl, like, he has an off season. Like, we just got to get right back at it the next day. So it's just a constant reminder of like challenging yourself and continuing to try to be better and better. And there's a lot of cool companies out there that I look at that I think are doing interesting things in our space specifically. I mean, Tiffany's would be the icon of excellence, I think, in how they operate and how they bring retail to life. And the flagship they put up in New York City is just absolutely spectacular. And the cafe that they built in there and the artwork that they have in the store is amazing. And there's a lot of great smaller brands that I admire what they're doing that had great founders behind it, whether it's Goriana or Majori. There's a low barrier to entry in our space. So we got to be aware of people out there. But, the only thing that I want our team really focusing on is ourselves and our customer.
Hey, everyone, it's Kula. We'll get back to the interview in just a second. Before we do, though, I have a question for you. Have you downloaded the How Leaders Lead app on your iPhone? If you haven't, take 20 seconds right now, go to the App Store, search for How Leaders Lead, and download the How Leaders Lead app. In the app, every day, you'll get a 2-minute video that'll give you a leadership insight from one of our amazing guests from our podcast to inspire you and to really get your mind in the right place before you start your workday. So go to the App Store, search How Leaders Lead, download the How Leaders Lead app, and start your day every day with 2 minutes of leadership wisdom. It'll take 20 seconds. Go to the App Store, download the app, and you'll be able to watch every day, just like me, the leadership insight from How Leaders Lead.
I know you take a lot of pride and you've built this billion-dollar brand. And that was, I know, a big goal for your company, certainly from where you guys started, and now that you're there, I mean, how do you set the next big goal for your company? I mean, what are you saying? Hey, okay, team, this is what we want to do next. How have the goalposts moved?
Yeah, so it's funny, David, there's so much white space for us. So we'll be talking to people who will see the, enterprise value that we've had. And it's like, man, the plane's really up and you guys are really cruising. I'm like, we haven't even left the gate yet. Like, we're still like boarding. Our company, even though we're, several $100 million in revenue at this point, we have less than a 10% national brand awareness. And so there is a ton of white space out there amongst people that don't know who Kendra Scott is. And I think one of the things that I love most about our business is, we're not just about, selling a product. We're about helping people and doing something special. So I think, for us, it's always about the bigger the business gets, the more people that we can help. We've got a real appetite for expansion here in the United States. We have a real appetite for expansion internationally. We launched a brand called Yellow Rose last year, which very similar to what Ralph did it with Double RL. Kendra has a ranch called the Yellow Rose Ranch. So a lot of Western wear. We're opening our first store actually next month here in Austin. Kendra's vision for this company from really the go was to have a global lifestyle brand. And I have worked at the quintessential American global lifestyle brand. And that's our, big, hairy, audacious goal for what we want to be, when we grow up, so to speak. But in the short term, we've got a lot of room to cover to just preach the gospel on who Kendra Scott is to people here.
You've had so much success, Tom, as a leader with your business. You had a great family. When you look back on your career, it doesn't necessarily have to be at Kendra Scott. You've had to have a failure somewhere along the line. What's one of yours and the biggest lesson that it taught you?
So when I had my holding company, I would say, it wasn't a colossal failure, but it was a failure. And I think I was just probably too big for my britches. I really, when I was younger, I've always been a goal person, David, and I've written down goals and I'm very disciplined about it. And one of my goals when I was younger was to be a CEO. And I wanted that so bad that I did it prematurely. I wasn't ready to be a CEO, and I became a CEO of this company, and I didn't lead it the right way. And like I said, I wasn't sharp enough. I couldn't understand a balance sheet the way I needed to. I was so determined to prove people wrong and be successful and be a great CEO, that I wasn't being honest with myself. And it was a failure. We wound up, we had a heated outerwear brand called Gerbing. Ultimately became called Guide, and probably should have flushed it through bankruptcy, and we didn't, because I was too, thick-headed. And I think that was, and I was afraid, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed about it. So I didn't reach out to people I knew that cared about me, that could have given me sound advice. And I was too embarrassed, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And I think that was probably the one and I learned a lot from it, right? I mean, you learn from your failures, not from your successes. And it taught me a lot of humility. And, hopefully I don't make those mistakes again in the future.
What do you think was the seminal moment in your career where you realized, you had this chip on your shoulder, you're driving for excellence, trying to move up the ladder. When did you have that seminal moment that said, hey, I might actually be able to do this? I mean, or was there some point where you said, you know what? I got it in me.
I would say that I've always had a high degree of confidence. I mean, you have to have confidence and self-belief, I think, to do anything as an athlete, I will tell you, I said this last night to the kids at UT. I always struggle with imposter syndrome, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm there yet. I feel like I have confidence. I know I'm capable. I mean, we've put some great points on the board, and I know that I've been a good leader, and I've created cultures and help create cultures of winning, because I've got people that'll run through a wall for me because they know I would run through a wall for them. But I struggle with that. But I think getting through COVID and doing what we did here was a seminal moment for me, in that, holy cow, I just led through about the hardest thing that I'm ever going to have to lead through. And we did it pretty good. We got a great team around us. And I think one of the other lessons I learned in my holding company was I didn't trust people enough. And we have a great team that I put a lot of trust in, and I believe in them, and they know I believe in them. And I think that's given me greater confidence to be a leader that I could be. And I think, I mentioned earlier with my sister passing away and stuff. It's when you go through really hard things, I think it just galvanizes teams, and it makes you realize what's important in life. And I think that stuff's going to help shape me over the years.
You obviously are a leader that has high self-awareness, and you're trying to improve. And I was impressed by the fact you said you really couldn't read the balance sheet you wanted the way how you thought you should. And you went back and got your MBA. What are you working on today, Tom? I mean, how are you sharpening your axe? What's going to make you better in the next 5 years? Yeah,
I mean, I'm constantly trying to improve on everything. I mean, I want to always show up. Truthfully, David, you may have lived through this too but I probably I didn't show up for my family the way that I needed to earlier in my career. I was so busy building and accomplishing. And I'd say that the most important thing for me right now in this moment is showing up for my wife and kids in the way that they need me to show up for them for. And for our people, I'm just constantly trying to show up for them better. And what I'm working on today, finance is always going to be a weakness of mine, I feel like. And I'm always trying to get better and learn the nuances in business and study where businesses have had success and how they haven't had success, and try to dissect the balance sheet and the P&L in a thoughtful way as to avoid pitfalls in the future. And I'd say the other thing is, trying to get our company to constantly move faster to make sure we're staying ahead of things. Those are the things that I'm probably working on right now.
That's great. Tom, this has been so much fun catching up with you, and I'd like to have a little bit more fun with my lightning round of questions. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. What are 3 words people would use to best describe you?
Stubborn, hardworking, and passionate.
That's 4, but I'll let you get away with it.
All right, 4 words. That's right. Sorry.
If you could be one person for a day besides yourself, who would it be?
If I could be one person beside myself, I'd be hard not to want to be Tom Brady.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Laziness.
Who would play you in a movie?
Oh, geez. Uh, Ben Affleck.
I see a little bit of that. That's a good one. Your favorite golf hole in the world?
Oh, I'd say number 12 at Augusta National.
You get 2 front row tickets to anything you want. Where would you go?
I would go to Final Four, North Carolina being in the final game, championship game.
That's a great one. The most fun thing about living in Austin, Texas?
No income tax.
Hey, you're pretty good at finance. Don't sell yourself short. What is that street in Austin? 7th Street or
6th Street and Rainy Street. Rainy Street and 6th Street are the two ones. Yeah.
I thought you might say the Longhorns.
No,
are you a Longhorn fan?
I'm an adopted Longhorn fan. Yeah.
The feeling you get when you see the color yellow.
Happy.
What's one of your daily rituals, something that you never miss?
Waking up early.
What's something about you few people would know?
I'm a big softie. I feel like.
That's great. All right. That's a great job on the lightning round. Good job. Just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
I love your company's focus on philanthropy and giving back. And you've talked about these Kendra Care events, you talked about how that really drove you to the company. How do you think about taking that to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, it is, we have 3 pillars of the company, Dave. It's family, fashion, and philanthropy. And fashion's kind of, a box we got to check, if I'm being honest. And we have to have that one. Family, I alluded to it earlier. The company feels like a family in a way like I've never felt, but philanthropy is the most important thing that we do. And we don't do it in a big way from, writing big checks to large philanthropic organizations. Usually we do it on a one-to-one way, where we're helping individuals that need help, or a family that needs help. So I think that, the bigger the business gets, the more people that we can hire in our philanthropic department. There's a great woman named Sheena Wild who leads that for us. And the more resources that we can give her, the more times that Kendra's on Shark Tank, the more people that know about Kendra Scott and learn about this, the better. And it might sound self-serving, and I suppose it is to some degree because our business would get bigger as a result. But this isn't authentic to who we are. We've been doing this the business has been around for 22 years. For 22 years, Kendra Scott has made the person and the business has made this, the number one priority for everything that we do. And that's never going to change. And I think it's really important. So it's not about innovating necessarily. It's about more people knowing about it and coming to us. And I would say maybe, doing a better job in marketing to let people know that this is the driving force for us. And we're not just selling jewelry, but we're trying to help as many people as possible. So it's something we try to prioritize and spend more time thinking about all the time.
You said that your customers are your boss. So how do you, as a leader, stay in touch with your customers? What do you specifically do? Do you do anything that's unique on that front, or?
Yeah. Look, I would say every time, I'm going to answer this a couple ways. Every single time I go to speak anywhere, I spoke to kids at UT yesterday. I tell you, a seminal moment for me in my life where I stood back and I was like, holy cow, I can't believe this is happening. I gave the commencement speech at Chapel Hill to the MBA class last year. And you talk about somebody who's the only person in their family to graduate high school, standing in the Dean Smith Center, talking to MBA grad. I was like, holy cow, I can't believe that this is happening. I always give out my email to everybody. So I want people to reach out to me and ask for help. I want customers to reach out to me. Every single negative customer service email that comes in, I see, and I respond to almost all of them. And we work, not just myself, but Kendra, myself, all of us, we work in the retail stores. My wife works in the retail stores with me. My kids worked in the retail stores. We sit there and we don't just I remember in other companies I've worked at, we would go around and visit retail stores. We work in the retail stores. We serve customers. I'm in the back room restocking things. I work in our distribution center. Our team works in a distribution center. So I feel very close to the customer. And I think that really matters. And we expect every employee to do the same thing, whether you work in retail or not. Like they're the tip of the spear of what we do. So that's how I do it. And that's our expectation. And it works because you know how it is when you're running a business or a business unit or a department or a division, like you get caught up in the day to day and you get so far away from your customer. And like, that's the reason you have a job. And, we try to stay as close as we can to our customer because, like I said, she and he sign our paychecks.
All right. Last question here. What's the best piece of advice you can give to someone who wants to be a better leader?
The best piece of advice I can give to somebody in life is pay attention to time. Like it's the only currency you can't make more of. You can make more money, you can't make more time, and use it really wisely. And invest in the people and the things that matter, and divest of the things that don't. And when you do that, it frees you up to spend more time with your family. It frees you up to focus on the things that matter in your life and your business. Because, you know, as we both know, time is short, and I think wasting it is a shame in business and life. And I think if you kind of it serves me well in business. It's serving me well in life as well.
You know, Tom, it's always inspiring to me when I meet someone who focuses on doing the right things for people, their customers, and then the right things, strangely enough, they just kind of come right back to you. You know, it's an incredible, blessing when that happens. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's really great to talk to a leader like yourself who's authentic. You know
Thanks.
who you are. You're very focused on others, and you're a happy guy. You know,
Yeah.
The other directed people are the happiest guys in the world, and you got a big smile on your face right now. And I don't think it's because of the 44 months of great sales, which doesn't hurt, by the way. Let's face it, we love that. But you know, the other thing is what really makes you tick, and I want to thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time to be on this podcast. Appreciate you very much.
David, you get out of life what you put into it. You know, I try to put a lot into it, and I can't thank you enough. I mean, I don't know if I've said this to you kind of offline, but the impact you've had on my life, it hasn't been a lot of time together, but the impact you've had on my life has been profound. And I mean that very, very genuinely. And I am so fortunate to have had people like you in my life. You've left a lasting mark, forever. And and I think the best thing about that is it's taught me how powerful that is to do it for others. But you and Seth and Jim, I mean, there's people in my life that have made an investment of just a little bit of time. And it has really, especially for somebody that didn't have that in a dad, it really has meant a lot to me. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate and care about you.
I could tell you right now, your kids are very, very happy to have you as their dad. You're an amazing guy. So
thanks, man.
Thank you very much, buddy. You know, I like to say when you do the right things happen. And the way Tom is leading at Kendra Scott really proves my point. Yes, you've got to deliver results, but how you treat people along the way really matters. And in fact, when you focus on serving your team and connecting with customers, you build the kind of rapport that you need to get those hard results. It all goes hand in hand. So let me ask you, is there an area of your organization where the results are just not where you want them to be? Well, this week, sit down with a couple of your team members and brainstorm on what you can do to focus on making real connections with your customers. I bet you'll find some great ideas that will help you move the needle. So do you want to know how leaders lead? What we learned today is that great leaders know that connection creates results. Coming up next on How Leaders Lead, I've got Fawn Weaver, the founder and CEO of Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey.
I move forward, I take those lessons with me, and they inform how I move in the future, but they do not take me back to my past.
So be sure to come back again next week to hear our entire conversation. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of How Leaders Lead, where every Thursday you get to listen in while I interview some of the very best leaders in the world. I make it a point to give you something simple on each and every episode that you can apply to your business so that you will become the best leader you can be.